Hey YouTube, so today's video is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. You hear YouTubers say this often for all of the potential liability stuff. But listen, let me tell you something. If ever there was a video that was to be produced, at least on this channel, where I need to append the very beginning of it with that statement, this is the one, because I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of these reserve-backed protocols that are paying out stupid APY numbers. Like, we're talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of percent APY, and it brings up a lot of questions, right? Like, is this a scam? Is this legit? And the answer to that question, which I'm going to dive into more in this video, is it's not a scam, but it's not everything that it would seem to be as well. So we're going to cover all of these reserved-backed currencies, and we're going to talk about what I think about them, and I'm even going to dive into one with you, and we'll track it over the next, I don't know, 6 months on this channel to kind of see how it performs. So like I said, not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. And as we get into this, make your own wise decisions. Never listen to YouTubers, especially this one here or any others, because you'll go broke if you listen to them, right? So I'm just going to unpack this out of my own curiosity. None of this is financial advice. You got it? Okay, here we go. All of this and a whole bunch more coming right up. All right, YouTube, thank you guys so much for joining. I can't tell you how much I love you guys. It is so much fun for me to be able to just share my mind and what's going on. And, you know, if you don't know me very well, if you found me from a Google or YouTube search algorithm, hey there, I'm Wes Spencer. I'm actually a technologist. I'm a cybersecurity startup guy. I build, fund, invest in companies. And this YouTube channel is because I love it. It's a fun, creative outlet for me. I'm not doing this because I want it to be full-time. It's not of interest to me to be a full-time YouTuber. So therefore, I take really very few sponsorships. I don't really do any kind of moon pumping or any of that kind of price speculation stuff where you'll see channels say this crypto's blowing up and then they say this one's falling apart and they're just rug pulling or manipulating the market. Not here, not on this channel. I cover the things that interest me and we stick to the technology. And I realize I'm sticking to the technology on this video, but I also realize these like very attractive, like hundreds of thousands of APY percentage, like DeFi 2.0 platforms, it can feel like I'm like, you know, being one of those. So I'm very careful on this. That's why I started with the whole like financial advice stuff. Okay, so a couple other things. Hit like, hit subscribe. I know every YouTuber says that, but it really does go a long way for this channel. If you want it to have better reach, do both of those. Share it with a friend. Check out our subscriptions. Check out the awesome merch that we have as well on the store. All of those are great ways for me to connect and just continue to build the brand with you guys. Okay, so let's just jump in. Here's the way I want to get this started. So I covered on my last video this whole like Omicron, you know, blow up in that crypto, and I really didn't know a lot about it. I did do a little research. I'm like, okay, so it's like a reserved-backed DeFi kind of thing that pays out super high APYs. And I did not a live, but I did a YouTube premiere, and one of the commenters who was on there said, hey Wes, have you ever heard of Wonderland? And I wrote back and I said, no, never heard of Wonderland, don't know what it is, but I'll go take a peek at it. And I take a look at it, and it's just funny. Like, a lot of times I jump into like cryptos and they catch my eye because you guys are the ones that warn me, or not, maybe not warn me, you're the ones that tell me about it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go take a peek. So it turns out that this Wonderland thing is very similar to the Omicron thing that blew up in price that happened just last week when all of the COVID stuff came out around it, which is what my video was about. Well, I continue to research and dive down this rabbit hole, and I see all of this is related, and all of these projects are forked off an original project called Olympus. And Olympus was one of these like really high APY earning platforms that a bunch of people were like, is this thing legit? It seems like a total Ponzi scam. And it looks like it, right? And there's even maybe elements of all of this. And I almost think of a lot of these as like almost opposites of these burn tokens, where we create a ton of supply and then we have deflation. These are more like inflation based. It's almost like the total opposite here. And so I want to talk about these a little bit. I just think it's a funny collision of how I started looking at this Omicron thing. Someone told me about Wonderland. I start diving into Wonderland, and then I jump into all of these other projects that are similar. And so I'm going to cover all of this in today's video. So let's just switch over and let's do a screen share here. And let's kind of take a peek at how all of this works. So this is Wonderland. This is wonderland.money. This is the one that someone sent me. I am not advocating them. I am not recommending them. I am not sponsored by them. I have talked to none of their founders, although we do know who some of the founders are, which is awesome. So again, keep in mind, I'm going to experiment and play with this and put some money into it and see what happens to it. But I'm not recommending that you guys do this at all. Please don't take this video as me doing that. I'm just showing you how this works. So we look down here at the bottom, and you guys should be able to see this. It's a little hard to see where my image is, but you can see this current APY is at 86,000%, right? And you got to be like, that's impossible. How could any project be offering 86,000%? That seems like a total scam. Like there's just no way that could be legitimate. And of course it catches your eye. Anyone that sees that kind of percentage, when you're used to like 3% to maybe a stable coin at 10%, you're like, whoa, that's either not legit or there's something scammy, or I just kind of want to get into it, right? And so let's talk about this a little bit and where this is all coming from. So again, this is a fork off of Olympus, and I'll jump into Olympus in just a minute, but there's a couple things that I want to share just from the introduction page. In today's video, we're not going to dive in, like I don't expect you to become an expert level on any of this, nor am I an expert on any of this. Like I know enough about it to be able to make this video, but we're going to be careful of like, let's talk about what we know about. So they call this right here, they call it, it's not the first decentralized reserve currency, it's the first that's running on the Avalanche network. And I haven't really covered Avalanche. I actually know somebody on that team. Avalanche is really, really, really cool. At some point I need to do a deeper dive on it, but this one's on Avalanche. And it's based on, like Wonderland, the whole project is based off their own token called Time that runs on side of it. It's backed by some assets. MIM, this is an asset that was created by the founder of Wonderland, who has some other projects that they've created as well. And we don't have time in today's video to dive into that, but definitely Google up MIM if you want to see more about it. I think it's Magic Internet Money, which is such a great title for it. The purpose of it is a policy-backed control system or currency system. In other words, it's not like a stable coin where in theory, the stable coin has like a certain amount of like fiat on the back end that backs it. And that's how they peg it to a dollar. And we know it's not exactly that way, even with like Tether and these others, which is why federal regulators are drawing a lot of attention to them. This is a policy-backed one, in which, in other words, the protocol, the algorithm controls a whole lot of this. And so we're not going to dive into all of the guts and details behind this, but I just wanted to share a little bit of that at that high level so you kind of understand how it works. And the reason you'd want to participate in it, of course, is two things: staking and minting. So when you do minting, you're involved in the liquidity pool process by which you're helping provide liquidity to make this whole thing work. And staking is just the method by which the tokens are created and the method by which we create interest in this whole platform as we're continuing to create inflation and generate or create new time tokens. And we'll dive into that in a little bit more. I realize that may be a little bit muddy as we start, but just bear with me for a little bit. So we do see it's a fork of Olympus. And so that kind of tells us, well, then let's go see what Olympus is all about, right? Like what exactly is Olympus? So here's Olympus right here. And by the way, as always, all my links will be in the description, so you'll be able to get to all of these if you want to see them. But here is Olympus. Olympus has been around for a fair amount larger. I think if we go all the way over here, we actually cheat and see this thing started back in June of 2020, this year, 2011 or 2021. Wow, can't get my years right here. And we can see it's a pretty interesting run, right? So locked up currently, the value of its entire, like its market cap is $3.8 billion. So it's a fairly large market cap crypto. It's done pretty well. I mean, you guys know how I talk about these things. If you haven't, I've got a couple of videos I've produced around how I look at cryptos and the market caps to determine their maturity level and where they're at. So this is a fairly mature project. One of the things that you're going to have to really understand about these, if you want to dive in deep and truly understand, is the difference between the value of the token and then the treasury itself. And the treasury, I mean, you can almost think of it as like the US Treasury, right? That's responsible for the minting and creation of currency. And they're the ones that, have some amount of guarantee of like how much we're going to create and where it's created from. That's kind of what the treasury is all about. And one of the things that's interesting about this is, there's this idea of, hey, look, in any crypto project, what happens if there's a ton of people that are in the system and they all decide to pump and then dump? And we see this happen all the time with cryptos, right? Especially early. They jump in, they're like super interesting. And the early people get in very early at a cheap rate. They wait till its price goes pretty high and then they just sell like crazy. We know this happens across the board. And so a lot of these DeFi 2.0 projects are like, well, how can we prevent that? how can we incentivize early people to be in, but early people to stay in and to make sure that they don't get out too early, harming the entire ecosystem? This is a huge problem to be solved. And a lot of these like DAO 2.0 protocols like Olympus, Wonderland, Omicron, and I'm going to show you some others in a little bit, they're all attempting to solve this by really high APY rates. In other words, if I'm making an insane amount of APY, I don't, as someone that staked in early, I don't want to get out of it because there's a lot of APY I'm going to make out of it. And I also understand if you're technical and you're watching this video, you're like, well, yes, you made a mistake. It's not about the APY because of dilution. Pause on that. I know that. I'll get to that in just a minute as well. I just want to stick to the high level of like, they're trying to stop people from jumping into a crypto early and then dumping out of it. And so one of the motivations is a high APY. The other motivation behind a lot of this as well is they want to make sure that they back a minimum value of the price of the token, right? And so this is what they call risk-free value of those treasury assets. So what that's worth today of this 838 $1 million of what's worth like the value in the liquidity pools that the treasury owns. Let's say everybody dumps, 100% of people dump. It's like a bank run, right? Like everyone going on a bank run. Then the minimum value would be 181 million. In other words, there's protection in all this. Remember how they said this right up here at the very beginning? And I realize I'm looking at Olympus here and I'm using the descriptions from Wonderland, but they both operate the same way, right? They are a currency reserve, right? There's a minimum value that it cannot fall below. And so that's what you're seeing here with this, okay? We also see that the protocol, like who owns most of the liquidity pool, in this case with Olympus, is the protocol itself owns it. And that's a good thing. You want the higher this number, the higher the health of, if we started seeing this slant way down into like, 50% or below, we should be alarmed. We should be concerned. So the health is really good. And then you can see this right here is the key point I wanted to get into. So while the APY percentage rate was as high as like 100, and it's hard for me to get exactly to it, we'll call it 144,000% right here. Notice that it's gone down over time. Whoa, way down. But even at its lowest, what it's at today is it currently at 6,700%. That beats a bank's 1% by just a little bit, right? And so a couple things I wanted to share out of this. One thing is the way all of these reserve currencies work. If you found one that's new, like Wonderland, and it's currently paying out at its 80,000% number, or whatever the number is, just know it's not going to last that way forever. I know it brings up a lot of questions. How can it be so high? But I want you to know before I answer that question, just know, yes, it's really high, but it's going to go down over time based upon how many people are staking in and how much of the currency itself has been created. See, this is an inflationary type of currency, very much like the US dollar. We're always printing more money. This is the opposite of these burn tokens. You guys know I cover burn tokens like FEG, SafeMoon, some of those that are out there, and they're complete opposites in that those we've created like literally trillions, if not quadrillions of them, and then they burn over time. And the mechanism that they try to have in place with those to prevent people from pumping and dumping is to say, you're going to lose a lot on the reflections. You're going to lose a lot on that burning because you actually earn more tokens when people sell, when people buy. There's like a tax percentage that part of it's burned and part of it goes back to holders. That's sort of like this whole like a deflationary concept. What we see with these reserved backed currencies is they're inflationary. We have a very small amount that are created initially. And then what we're doing is we're incentivizing people to get in and to stake and hold by creating a whole lot of dilution, a whole lot of new that are created over these high APYs. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It's this idea of saying, hey, regardless of whether you got in super early at like 144,000 or you got in right now at 6,700%, notice that number went down pretty quickly, but then it kind of stabilizes for a while and it'll continue to slowly go down over time. But that's still 6,700% is awesome. Like that's really high. And so the APY is the one of the incentivizing drivers to get people to want to stick in and stay in the ecosystem. So that brings back Wonderland. Remember we said that Wonderland, here it is at 86,000%. So we're still pretty new in the world of Wonderland. It's still doing really well. Its current treasury balance is 871 million. Let me recorrect myself, million. So it's got some room to grow. Now, the other thing I want to jump into, and this is a really big question, is, okay, so the APY is growing that high. The thing you need to remember is What we're trying to do as an investor, if you decide to go into one of these, and again, make your own decisions, don't use this video as your primary motivator. Don't even use it as a motivator at all. I'm just trying to explain how this stuff works, right? Let me be real clear here. The reason these are high is let me say it this way. Yes, they're high, but you shouldn't be considered and be thinking about the APY percentages being your driver. You should think about it at the market cap as being your driver. Let me illustrate this maybe in an analogy for a minute. Okay, so let's say I buy a pizza for $20, right? And I say, wow, I'm happy with the deal. $20 for pizza is really good. Now let's say all of a sudden the pizza company comes in and says, hey, anytime you do that same $20 transaction, we're gonna give you 2 pizzas instead of 1. I'm like, okay, cool. Now I got 2 pizzas. That's pretty cool, right? Theoretically, that makes each pizza worth $10 each, right? Because I've diluted it. I've added more pizzas into the transaction. That's dilution. We take the same number and we multiply it, and so therefore it's worth less because we have more of them. But it's still a same $20 transaction. It's just that I get 2 pizzas instead of 1 for the price of $20. So let's say other people say, well, that's a really cool deal. I want those same 2 pizzas for $20. And all of a sudden there's a lot of market demand for this. And so then they say, well, man, we just can't continue to make pizzas profitably 2 at $20. So now it's going to be $20.01, or maybe $21, or whatever the market determines, right? And so the value of that goes up. And so the idea is the more people that are getting into this, as we have more and more dilution, the hope is that the market cap goes up as well. Another more technical way to say this, and I'm going to lean on this Reddit post right here. This is from the user Intrepid user on Reddit, and I'll put a link here as well so you can see this. This is a really good comment that kind of explains how the APY works. I'm just going to read the whole thing to you. So he says, so why will you not get the APY amount, like that high 80,000% or whatever it is? He says, so if the APY is 80,000% and you wait 1 year, then 1 year will turn into 800 tokens, just basic math, right? So we do 80,000% times the token, you get 800. But the circulating supply of tokens will also be 800x. Remember, because we said dilution. In other words, yeah, you're going to go from 1 token to 800, yes, but also the number of total tokens, because we diluted this for everybody, is 800 times the number of tokens that existed. That makes sense? That's what I'm trying to say with that pizza analogy. That's why the protocols talk about this 3-3. The basic idea is that even if supply increases by 800 times, and we're just using that as an arbitrary number here, while price should fall by 800 times, assuming constant market cap, it won't if people keep staking. And that's where these Ponzi-nomics come into play. I love this. So go read this entire post right here from Intrepid user. It's a really solid post that explains what we're trying to say here is, yes, we're offering these like super high APYs to attract people to get into the ecosystem, but we also know they're not going to last that long. And we also know that as we create more dilution, unless we have more users that jump into it and stay with it long term, driving the market cap up, then you're not really going to have a huge gain out of this, because the market cap is really what determines everything. In other words, yeah, you may have more tokens, but they've also been diluted for everyone else. So what we're really looking at here is a market cap play. What we're really going after is, I want to invest in all of this because it's going to give me the capability of me and others jumping into this and holding and staking long term. That's where my value comes from, because it'll grow the market cap over time. That's a bit simplistic, I realize. And there's probably some of you that are like with much deeper economics expertise than me, and like, Wes, you missed the point. It's more technical than that. Well, yes, I know. I'm being somewhat reductive here, but I'm doing that to make sure it makes sense at a high overall level. Okay, so now that we've seen all this, by the way, here's the original Olympus DAO. If you want to see the original guy that was created, again, you can see that its APY is much lower than it was before. Here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to buy some on Wonderland. I'm going to show you how all of this works. I've actually staked a little bit already. So here's the way this is going to work. I'm going to hit, if you want to get into this, I'm using MetaMask, and you need to get all of this going in MetaMask first. I'm not going to do a demo of that in today's video, but you need to figure out how to get Avalanche connected in your MetaMask wallet. That's how I'm doing it. There's probably other ways you can do it, but that's your first step, okay? And then what you can do is, when you're here on the Wonderland app, you can click on time, and then you can click this right here, add the token to your wallet. And what that will do is it will send all the time details, which is a custom contract, right? It'll add that to your MetaMask wallet. So you'll click on that and it'll add it. So I've already done that. The other thing you can do is you can go up here and click on this buy on Trader Joe. And what it'll do, you can actually see this if you kind of zoom in on my screen. You can see this at the very bottom. You can see it even gives you in the URL, it actually gives you the currency contract code, right? And so I've got that loaded right here. It gives you the warning, right? Anyone can create a contract, be aware, make sure this is the right time or the right whichever one you're working on. So I hit understand, I hit continue. And then here's what we're going to do. First thing I need to do is here is the swap. Again, I've already got it preloaded. So I'm swapping from Avalanche, because remember, this is an Avalanche project. I'm going to swap it into Time. Now, let me just say this. Where I got my Avalanche, I got it from Coinbase. One thing that I liked about Coinbase is I could buy up to $1,000 worth and immediately transfer it out. And so I didn't have to wait their 4-day waiting period because it was $1,000. So I immediately bought 1,000. I immediately sent it to my Coinbase. I'm sorry, not my Coinbase wallet. I sent it to my MetaMask wallet, and it's sitting there now. And I can even see this. I'm going to click MetaMask right here. There you can see. So I'm sitting on 7.9 Avalanche. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit max, and this is, I think, going to fail because I can't quite do a max because of the swap fees and all that in place, but I just want to show you how this would work. So I'm going to hit swap, and it says, okay, so I'm swapping this 7.9 Avalanche for 0.1 time, because time is worth a lot of money right now and probably going to grow. So I'm going to hit confirm. This is going to come up, ask me if I want to confirm it. I'm going to hit confirm, and oh, it actually worked this time. Okay, great. So there we go. So now I own, let's make sure of this. Now I own some more time. I can actually see it right here. The swap went through. I could view it on Snowtrace, which is Avalanche's like blockchain explorer if I wanted to see that. But I don't really need to do that. What I can do is just click up here, back on MetaMask, and then I can see assets. There we go. And there is my time that's sitting there. Okay, so I'm now the proud owner of some time. And the reason I need time is that's the actual token that Wonderland uses. So I go back to Wonderland. I shouldn't need to refresh. I'm going to do it anyway just to make sure everything's nice and new and correct. And I've connected my wallet here on Wonderland. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit max, and it sees from my wallet 0.18. Let's make sure that's correct. I'm going to click up here, and there it is, 0.183, 0.183. And then I just stake it, right? So I hit stake. It brings up a new contract. I'm going to have to approve it. So I hit confirm, and it goes into pending, as you can see right here. And then as I continue to wait, eventually this will go through, and then it should be approved. And so I'll just kind of do a little chatting while we're talking about this. So that's what gets me into the staking. There we go. My balance will update soon. It was successfully sent. And so now I will have my new amount that I have staked. Here in a little bit, I'll see that updated. I've already staked some before I did this video, right? So there it goes. It's successfully updated. I don't know if I need to refresh this or not. Yeah, okay, so there we go. So we're now staked, and I'm now making my APY out of this, right? And so that's how the process works. It's really not all that difficult. I bought on Coinbase. I transferred it to a MetaMask wallet that was set up correctly for Avalanche. You need to make sure that works, that you test it before you do some high dollar transaction. I then went to Trader Joe. I made the transaction. And then from Trader Joe, once I had my time, I then went to Wonderland and I staked it. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there for, I don't know, 3, 6, 12 months, something like that. And we'll see how the whole thing goes. Now, one thing I could do is I could play with their calculator, but understand the calculator is pure guesswork, my friends, right? So if I say, hey, here's the total amount I've, well, I guess it doesn't say how much. Let's just say I've staked 0.18, and then I can actually play with this and see how much it's going to be worth. So they say in 30 days it should be worth $2,500. If I stretch this out and I say let's go to 90 days, it should be worth $7,000. If I go all the way up to a year, it should be worth $1.something million. Hear me, guys. Hear me loudly. Do I think I'm going to own what it says right here, 5 Lambos, and I'm going to have $1 million out of this? No, I really don't think it's going to happen that way. Why? Because the APY is not going to stay that high, because we can't predict what the market cap is going to be, and thereby the price of time itself. It could go way down. And so I don't think it's going to be that high at all. Do I think it's worth putting $1,000, $2,000 in to see what happens? Well, I just did. So we're going to see what this does, because I think this is a pretty interesting ride and I want to see where this whole thing goes. Am I advocating that you do this? Again, for the 3rd time on this video, no. Make your own decisions. Any crypto that you invest in Wonderland or any other crypto is subject to complete loss. So make your own educated decisions and be willing to lose anything that you invest. I can't say that enough. Okay, so that's how the whole process works. I think I've warned you severely and enough times to know the APY will not stick. This calculator I do not fully believe in. You could, of course, play with some of these things and say, well, what happens if it's down at 6,700% by then? And maybe this thing is worth, 20,000 by then. You can see how the numbers change. Or what if the whole thing goes on a bank run and everything falls apart down to its minimum? I'm just going to guess $1,000. You can play with all of these things and really see what's going to happen. But again, who knows where this is all going to end up. Now, there are some other platforms that are out there that I wanted to show you. So here is Klima. Klima is an interesting one. I forget which token this guy runs on, but they're kind of driving this whole thing into some kind of climate action. I haven't researched enough to see this and how it works. Current API is 74,000. There's Invictus. I think Invictus runs on Solana. So here's Invictus. Not nearly as much information on theirs, not nearly as pretty, but who cares, right? There's Invictus. I'm already showing you Klima. And then if you want a list of some others that are out there, I have a list on the same Reddit post. I think it's over towards the top. Yep, there it was. And again, I will post this, but here's a list of others that are out there that you can look up, right? And so you can take a peek at any of these and see if any of them fit your, what you're looking for. I will say as I close, I think there will be more that spin up. And I also think, part of the problem with any of these is it requires a lot of people jumping into them, a lot of people using them, and a lot of people continuing to stake with them. That's sort of like what is going to make this thing work. And so if you have 10,000 of these that spin up, I would say just like all other crypto projects, unless you get the right one, you're probably not going to be really happy with your returns. That's my guess that happens on these. But if, one or two or three of these end up being like de facto used for 2 to 3 years, if not longer, then those that get in early on one may do fairly well and you may be happy with your investment. But you're going to have to make your own risk-informed decision. All right, guys, there you have it. That's my whole view and how to buy and get into Wonderland. Now you should understand a little bit more about why the APYs are so high. They're going to go down over time, the amount of people that are staking into them. The idea is that the market cap should grow. It's not all that dissimilar to other, investment strategies in the crypto world. You should also understand now at least a little bit more on why it's a market cap play. Don't be fooled by high APYs because of dilution. Hopefully you understand all these things, and also you know how to buy it, which is also really helpful. So I know this is a long video, but I wanted to get all of that out there before the weekend for me. I hope this was helpful. Hit like, hit subscribe, share this with a friend. Any of those things go a really long way. Thank you guys so very much.